Chris Drury's first draft class is an absolute disaster. Today we are calling out the Ranger GM for not drafting the right players.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1426 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, gonna go ahead and continue in our series of evaluating Chris Drury and his performance as New York Ranger general manager. And today, we're gonna hone in specifically on his draft classes. We're gonna kick things off with honestly, a pretty disastrous first draft class from Chris Drury back in 2021, and then we'll work our way a little bit more toward present day and talk about why some of the more recent Drury draft classes seem a little bit better than obviously this ill-fated first one. But again, this is all part of our Chris Drury analysis. Four-parter here. This is part 3. Another quick programming note is that this episode was recorded quite some time ago. It's going live while I'm on vacation, while I'm away. So enjoy this. And then when I come back, we'll dive into everything happening with the Rangers. But wanted to put out a couple episodes like this to hold you guys over in the meantime. And getting back to Chris Drury here, he has now presided over 5 different draft classes for the New York Rangers, if you can possibly believe that. And I will say, as far as analyzing Drury, this is the topic that I think is the most challenging, just because, it takes a while to really know what you've got when it comes to a certain draft class. It takes a while for these players to make their way through, junior hockey, college hockey, the AHL, whatever it might be, get into the NHL, and then kind of establish themselves as far as who they're going to be if and when they do make it to the NHL. So it's not easy, but we're going to do our best here with this. And I do think we've gotten to the point where it is fair to call Chris Drury's first draft class basically a disaster. And we'll run through the players real quick here, and I'll have some thoughts on the draft class as a whole. The first round, Brennan Othmann at number 16. Then in the third round, this is 2021, keep in mind, the third round, he picks both Jaden Grube and Ryder Korzak. Both of those 2 players are no longer with the New York Rangers organization. Then the fourth round, you had 3 players, Brody Lamb, Kalle Väisänen, and Talon Boyko. Fifth round, Yaroslav Smolash. And then in the 7th round, Hank Kempf, who is no longer with the organization. You start with Brennan Othmann here. I mean, he's kind of the headline grabber. You got to get it right with your first round pick. The Rangers don't seem to do that very often, but in theory, you have to get it right with your first round pick. But that's even more true in a draft class where you do not have a second rounder. And as of now, as of this recording, and what's the date here as I'm doing this? It is November 6th. As of this recording, there's nothing that Brennan Othmann has done thus far that's led us to believe that he's going to become, a guy who lives up to his draft status, a guy that was taken midway through the first round the year that the Rangers selected him. As of this recording, again, 2 points in the NHL in 26 career games. We had what can really only be described as a failed call-up earlier this season. This is after, keep in mind, the reports started dropping that the Rangers are open for business as it pertains to Brennan Othmann, that they would entertain trade offers. And as of now, again, as of this recording, I don't know what's happened since then, but as of this recording, it doesn't sound like too many teams were biting as far as, good trade offers for Brennan Othmann. But he gets caught up again this season. He plays in 1 game. He had a sequence on the ice where he passed on a play where I just don't know how or why he did not shoot the puck. And then the Flames went the other way, and they score on a rush, and Othmann didn't exactly get himself into the best defensive position. It does sound like and look like, frankly, that defensive hockey is certainly a weakness of Brennan Othmann, but you look at what he's done offensively in the NHL and not much of anything going on there either. So obviously it hasn't been very good as it pertains to Brennan Othmann. He was then a healthy scratch for 3 consecutive games after that 1 game, and then he was sent back down to the AHL in favor of the fellow member of the 2021 NHL draft class, Rangers draft class. That would be Yaroslav Smolash, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it hasn't been good for Othmann. When you look at just exclusively numbers, stats, I've mentioned this in the past, Vitaly Krasov and Elias Anderson were both more productive players, just going by the stats, in their first 26 games with the Rangers than was Brian Othmann. So it hasn't been good. Never say never. Things can always turn around, but this obviously has not gone according to plan for Othmann, for the Rangers, for Drury, for basically anybody involved with taking Brian Othmann in the first round as the Rangers did. Then we move along a little bit later in this draft class to the 2 third-rounders, Jaden Grube and Ryder Korzak. Again, neither one is any longer with the Rangers, and it's not exactly like they got a lot in return when they traded each of these players. Jaden Grube was traded to Edmonton for a 5th-rounder. Ryder Korzak was traded to Tampa Bay in exchange for Lucas Edmonds. None of the players that I just mentioned, Grube, Korzak, or Edmonds, have played a game in the NHL as of this recording. So, I mean, they're bad picks. What else can you say? These are not good picks. You pick somebody in the 3rd round, and Jaden Grube, by the way, was the first pick of the 3rd round, so bordering on a 2nd-rounder there. But, you take guys this early in the draft, you want them to become cornerstones of your franchise. I mean, 3rd round, maybe not necessarily a superstar, but somebody that's going to be a steady contributing member of your team. And if you do trade them, hopefully you get something of value in return for them. And obviously that is not the case with either Grube or Korzak. So that hasn't been good. You move to the 4th round, Brody Lamb. I mean, he's been steady with the University of Minnesota. This is now his 4th season there. 26 points in 39 games last season, and so far this season, as of this recording, 7 points in 10 games. There's some people that seem to like Brody Lamb. He's not the biggest guy on the ice, but he's somebody that in the 4th round doesn't look like too bad of a pick for this draft class. I mean, honestly, it's either Lamb or the next player that we're going to talk about here, Yaroslav Smolash, who was taken. Was it the 5th round or the 6th round for Smolash? It was the 5th round. The way things are going right now, it's looking like those are the 2 players in this draft class relative to the round that they were drafted that you probably feel the best about. It's either Lamb or Smolash here. Smolash, as of this recording, was called up by the New York Rangers. As of this recording, has not played in a game thus far for the Rangers, but it sounds like he's picked up his game a little bit with Hartford this season. He's been playing on the first line there alongside Dowling and, of course, Gabe Perreault. And naturally, playing with Perreault, I mean, he'd been on a heater, so playing alongside him, you're going to see a little bit of an uptick in your offensive numbers. But be that as it may, it sounds like Smolash has worked his way up there, worked his way up the ranks with the Wolfpack, and has taken advantage of playing with, a player that the Rangers obviously have high hopes for in Gabe Perreault. So, I mean, honestly, you look at this draft class top to bottom, and I realize we didn't do a thorough breakdown on every single player, but, these are the highlights and the lowlights of this draft class. It right now doesn't look like anything less than a failure. I mean, again, Othmann has scuffled badly when he's been in the NHL. Grube and Korzak were basically given away for nothing, and neither one of them has played in the NHL up to this point, so those were not good picks, or at least that's the way it looks. And you never know for sure. I mean, who knows? Brian Othmann might eventually become a good player on the New York Rangers. Crazier things have happened in the history of this league, and certainly in the history of the world as well. Grube and Korzak, I mean, you never know with the 2 of them either. Maybe they eventually work their way to the NHL and become a steady player for this team or for that team. But on the surface, the way things look right now, those are your first 3 picks. You took them in the 1st round, the 3rd round, and the 3rd round, respectively. Othmann, Grube, and Korzak, and hasn't worked out in any conceivable way for this New York Ranger team. And, maybe they get a late round steal with Smolash or Lamb. It could still work out for one of those players, but you look at this right now, it's not good. If one player of this draft class ever even becomes just a steady contributing depth piece for the Rangers, at this point, I'll consider that a win. It's still a poor draft class, but honestly, even that might not happen. This has a chance to go up there with an absolute disaster piece, one of the worst Ranger draft classes ever. I mean, that possibility is absolutely on the table. So Chris Drury's first draft class, a spectacular failure. Does it get any better after that? It does. It gets at least a little bit better, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment moving forward here. Talk about the concept of if Drury is getting better drafting players to the New York Rangers. And we're going to focus in specifically on the 2022 NHL draft class, and like I said, just work our way up to current day. Today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's go keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. We want to talk a little bit about Chris Drury's second draft class. It is a little better, but it's not good. I think that's fair to say as well. Again, to kind of just run through the gauntlet here, all the players that the Rangers drafted this year. The second round, they didn't have a first rounder, so you go right to the second round. They got Adam Sikora at number 63 overall. He was the third to last pick of the second round. The third round was Bryce McConnell-Barker. The fourth round was Noah Laba. We're going to talk about Laba in just a second here, but as of right now, the way things stand, I think this is far and away the best draft pick that Chris Drury has made thus far as Ranger GM. And, the book is still out on a lot of these players, Noah Laba included. He's just getting started. But as of right now, looking at the player and what round they were taken, Laba looks like, I think, the best pick that Drury has made thus far. Fifth round, you've got Victor Mancini and Maxim Barbashev. And then in the sixth round, you've got Zachary Karpa. So, again, we'll start at the beginning here. Sikora, as of right now, and he is still very young, so you never know for sure. He just turned 21, I think, like last month or 2 months ago. The book is still out, and he's still with the Wolfpack doing his thing. As of right now, the way things stand, it's not really looking all that good. Nobody ever talks about Sikora. That's what really blows my mind, because Ranger fans are so in tune with this team and so plugged in and so excited to know about the next prospect and when might this guy make his debut with the Rangers and how are the Rangers going to use him and how are the Rangers going to screw up this guy's development, all that stuff. There's always those questions. Nobody ever talks about Adam Sikora, and he's never even really considered a call-up option. Maybe part of the reason for all this is that the Rangers are looking to take the long road with Sikora. He is, not the biggest guy out there on the ice, and maybe he's somebody that they see as a little bit more of a pet project. But, you look at his numbers with the Hartford Wolfpack, they are underwhelming to say the least. As of this recording, 146 games, 19 goals, 37 assists for a total of 56 points in 156 games. So basically a third of a point per game player. And I don't know what the Wolfpack have done recently. I don't see the lineup every single game. I think I see them more often than not. But in a recent Wolfpack lineup, they had him out there on the fourth line. He's on the fourth line while guys like, Bryce McConnell-Barker and Justin Dowling and other, random veterans are playing in the top nine. Dowling was on the first line. And Dowling's a center. They had him as center anyway. And Sikora's a winger more often than not. But still, that's pretty eye-opening there that Sikora is buried on the fourth line with the Hartford Wolfpack, somebody that you took in the second round. So, what is the plan here? Are we even is the Ranger organization even going to act like this is somebody that they have big plans for, that this is somebody that they see with the Rangers one day? Again, it's at least possible that they're taking the long road with Sikora and just slowly developing him before he becomes a realistic option for the Rangers. But, if nothing else, I think you'd like to see a few more points in this for Sikora. So, you can't look at this and say that it was a good draft pick. Maybe it turns into one somewhere down the road, but the way things stand now, the level at which Sikora has played overall, not great. You move on to the third round, you've got Bryce McConnell-Barker. Now, this is somebody that I kind of like, but even I have to acknowledge that his ceiling seems somewhat limited. In fact, quite limited. And we don't know for sure. Again, can't emphasize that enough. These players are just getting started and they're very young. They're all in their early 20s and whatnot. So it's at least possible that these guys, somebody could grow by leaps and bounds from one season to another. You never know for sure. Now, McConnell-Barker, he is a hard-nosed player, but this guy is allergic to scoring. He's in his second full season with the Pack. And again, early in the game for Bryce McConnell-Barker, as it is for a lot of these players. So I don't want to crush any of them. But in 81 total games for Bryce McConnell-Barker, 10 goals, 11 assists for a total of 21 points in 81 games. That's not a lot. And that's the AHL. So you play him in the NHL. What's his scoring going to look like then, right? So for me, this is somebody that it feels like has a limited ceiling. Maybe at one point he develops into like a steady, hard-nosed fourth liner for the Rangers or somebody else. But third rounder, I think you'd probably be looking for a little bit more than this. Again, he's kind of a favorite of mine because, watching him the few times that I've gotten to watch him, it does look like he'll stick his nose in there. He'll do some of the dirty work. He'll get in people's faces. But as of now, yeah, you can't like the returns here overall if you're the Rangers, I don't think. Fourth round, Noah Laba. Talked about him briefly just a second ago. Again, this is the best pick that Chris Drury has made in the draft as Ranger general manager, especially when you factor in the round in which he was taken. Getting Noah Laba in the fourth round looks like nothing less than an absolute steal. The kid basically kicked down the door in the preseason and in the rookie series, and he's won over Ranger fans very quickly because he plays a very simple game, but a very hard-nosed game. He plays straight-line hockey. He'll get in your face a little bit. He's been involved in a couple of skirmishes here and there. He'll finish his check. He'll go into the corners for sure. Seems to be a really good passer as well. That's something not to sleep on. Noah Laba's passing, I think, is very good. He's flashed some offensive ability as well. This looks like nothing less than an excellent pick by Chris Drury and the New York Rangers. And again, as far as like the gold medal of draft picks in the Drury era, this is it right here. I don't think it's particularly close right now. You move on to the 5th round, Victor Mancini. You got to give Drury a point for this one too, because this pick basically allowed the Rangers, or at least helped the Rangers, get JT Miller back in town with the Rangers. And I know there's some people that have mixed feelings about that whole thing. There's people that just don't like JT Miller, and I can understand that to a degree. He's obviously had some volatility over the years that maybe has hurt him at different stops throughout his career, but he is the Ranger captain. He is one of their better players. And Victor Mancini took him in the 5th round, and then he got into 15 games with the Rangers last season while Lindgren was hurt. He eventually was sent back down to the AHL, but Mancini played well enough that you could include him in that trade for JT Miller and get JT Miller back in town. So Mancini, again, not a Ranger for very long, obviously, but he did play well enough that you could make a trade that you felt you needed to make. So for that reason, getting a 5th rounder is a useful trade chip. That works as well. So I think you got to give Drury a point for Mancini as well, getting him in the 5th round. And there's not much to say about the last 2 players. I mean, Barbashev is in the ECHL with the Flames organization, and Karpa is with the Bloomington Bison. That's the ECHL team for the Rangers. But it's forgivable because that's the 6th and 7th round. Or was it the 5th and 6th? I got to go back up here and look at the list again now. So that was, the 5th round for Barbashev, the 6th round for Karpa. But again, it's late in the draft. It's forgivable if you pick some players that don't pan out that late. So, yeah. Bottom line, 2022 was better than 2021, but it wasn't good. I mean, the shining light here is Noah Laba, and also the Mancini pick obviously enabled the Rangers to acquire JT Miller. So in just a minute, we're going to move on a little bit closer to current day. We're going to take a look at both the 2023 draft class and the 2024 draft class. We're actually going to omit 2025 because honestly, that just happened a couple of months ago. I mean, maybe we'll have some quick thoughts about it, but honestly, like those players have only played a handful of games since being drafted by the Rangers. So for me, you really want to look at these first 4 draft classes by Chris Drury, and we're going to continue that with 2023 and 2024 in just a minute. It does get a little bit better. Going to explain why in just a second. Today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Rugiet. Let's be real, making excuses does not solve anything. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it so easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it is all handled by real doctors. Visit Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNHL so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. Okay, 2023 draft class for the New York Rangers here. There were only 5 players. I would say as of right now, this looks like easily Chris Drury's best draft class. His best individual pick, again, as far as like when he got the player and what that player has shown so far, again, for me, it's still the draft class before this with Noah Laba. But when you look at the entire draft class as a whole, to me, this is his best work to date. So the first round of 2023, he had Gabe Perreault being taken at number 23 overall. The 3rd round was Drew Fortescue. The 5th round, Rasmus Larsson. And then the 6th round, Dylan Robrick and Ty Henricks. On paper, that looks pretty solid. And again, we don't know for sure because the only player here that's playing the NHL as of now is, or any kind of professional hockey. Oh, well, there's 2 for that. Gabe Perreault and Dylan Robrick have both played with the Hartford Wolfpack. But the only one that's played in the NHL thus far is Gabe Perreault, and that was just 5 games last season. But we start with Gabe. So again, recording this in advance of the episode that it will drop, or the date that this episode will drop. But it's possible by the time you're hearing this, by the time you're watching this, the Gabe Perreault is already in the NHL with the New York Rangers. He looks like he's very close to kicking the door down. And as of this recording again, to use that phrase one more time here, the Rangers certainly could use some more offense. That is for sure. And there's guys that are kind of scuffling right now, and maybe Gabe Perreault gives you a little bit of a spark. But either way, Perot has been fantastic. He was on an absolute heater with the Hartford Wolfpack where he had 5 goals and 5 assists in his first 9 games, basically just letting the league on fire and basically doing whatever he wants. You occasionally will see Ranger fans who will try to write off Gabe Perot because of what he did in his 5 games with the Rangers last season. He didn't have any points in any of those games. I don't think it's even possible to make a bigger mistake than that, because you got to remember, now there's no guarantee that Gabe Perot is going to work out. I can acknowledge that. But to judge him on just 5 games that he played last season, fresh out of college, first taste of pro hockey, walking into an absolute dumpster fire of a situation with the Rangers last season, you can't judge him on just those 5 games. I'm going to look to the future now and what he has been doing with the Hartford Wolfpack, piling up all these points. So that's kind of where things stand with Gabe Perot. I still think he has a very, very bright future here, and I think this is a great pick by Chris Drury. Now, on one hand, Drury and the Rangers, you have to say, at least to an extent, got pretty lucky here, because all the mock drafts that I was seeing had Gabe Perot being taken quite some time before number 23 overall, but he slipped down the draft class, and he slipped down the draft, and he slipped down the draft, and there he was at number 23, and the Rangers pounced, and they got their guy. I think they got a little bit lucky with this, but I do also give Drury and the Rangers credit for not trying to do anything too fancy here. I'm not trying to get cute with this pick. Bottom line, the best player, the most talented player remaining in the draft at this point, for my money, hands down, was Gabe Perot. So they just took the consensus best player remaining, and it does look like Gabe Perot has a bright future with the New York Rangers. Again, the Rangers did get a little bit lucky here, but they took advantage of it, and for my money, they made the right pick at number 23, taking Gabe Perot in a situation where he shouldn't have even been still available, but he was, and the Rangers obviously made it count. So then you move to the 3rd round, and you've got Drew Fortescue. Fortescue has become one of my favorite Ranger defenseman prospects, really one of my favorite Ranger prospects overall. I might even put him slightly ahead of Scott Morrow, because Morrow right now, the MO on him is basically that he's an offensive defenseman, and maybe he's got to work on the defensive aspects of his game a little bit. Fortescue, to me, kind of seems like the total package. By all accounts, he's done a great job with Boston College. He's now a junior there, but 83 games, 6 goals, 17 assists. He's a plus 40 in his 3 seasons with BC. It's impossible to say for sure how he's going to do in the NHL. We're just not there yet. He's got a ways to go, but I think so far so good for Fortescue. The pick looks like a good one. Again, he's only in college. He's got a long road to travel to get to the NHL, but somebody that I think seems to have a pretty safe floor, and somebody that I think sooner or later you're going to see him in Ranger blue. Might take a little while, but I do think he'll get there, and I do think he'll be a solid player for this team. No way to know for sure, of course. Then you move along to one of the other highlights of this draft class, and it's going to be Dylan Robrick. This is somebody else that's gotten a lot of buzz from Ranger fans. I mean, to begin with, he was taken in the 6th round. So if you get anything out of Robrick, if he even makes it to the NHL, in a way, you've already kind of won. But there's reason to believe that the future is bright for Robrick. This kid, first of all, we've talked about this before, size does not slump. And Dylan Robrick goes 6'7", 205 pounds. And by all accounts, he's somebody that uses his frame to his advantage, will score a bunch of dirty goals as well. Last season was his first with the Hartford Wolfpack. He scored 20 goals and had 14 assists in 72 games. He was also a +2. He led the team in goals, led the Hartford Wolfpack in goals as a 20-year-old rookie. And I realize Hartford was offensively challenged last season, but that's still a pretty amazing accomplishment to step into, your first taste of pro hockey as a 6th-round draft pick, and you go out there and you lead the team in goals. You hang a 20-burger on the league in your first season there. Sooner or later, you got to think Robrick is going to get his chance with the New York Rangers. And the thing that I like here is that, his floor, or rather, his floor seems to be as a 4th rounder in the NHL. Because again, the size doesn't slump. He's very physical. Sounds like he plays with something of a mean streak as well. So that's his floor. He'll be on the 4th line. And if the offense can translate from the AHL to the NHL, then you might really have something here. You might have somebody that can at least be a middle sixer at the very least. And if you get that in the 6th round, then you're doing something right. The other guys that were drafted this round, there's not really a whole lot to say about Rasmus Larsson in the 5th round or Ty Henricks in the 6th round. But the bottom line, between Perot and Fortescue and Robrick, this looks like a really good draft class for Drury. We don't know for sure yet, but so far so good. The early returns have been positive for this draft class. Then we move along to 2024. And this season, there were actually only 4 Rangers that were drafted, or 4 players that were drafted to the Rangers, I guess I should say. The 1st round, you had E.J. Emery. 4th round, Raul Boyard. 5th round, Nathan Aspinall. And the 6th round, Rico Gradul. So Emery's the big one here. You only have 1 pick in the first 3 rounds combined. You really got to make it count. I feel like the Rangers have probably done that. Again, it's very early in the game. He's only been drafted by the Rangers for a little longer, a little over a year at this point. For the most part, though, by all accounts, it sounds like he's been very steady with North Dakota. You're not going to get much offense at all, basically no offense. 38 career college games as of now, 2 goals and 1 assist. He's also a +4 in that time, but very steady, very consistent. Won some accolades from North Dakota University last season. Sounds like he was one of that team's better players. It kind of just felt like it was time for the Rangers to take a defenseman early in the draft. And this year, again, only having 1 pick in the first 3 rounds, to me, it felt like a blue liner was the way to go. And Emery, for somebody taken in the first round, granted it was late in the first round, he sounds to me, at least going by what everybody was saying about him and whatnot going into the draft that year, a little bit more of a floor pick than a ceiling pick, but somebody that, should be a steady defenseman for the New York Rangers. Obviously, we keep our fingers crossed that that is indeed the case. We move along to Boyard. He's putting up some pretty solid numbers in the QMJHL, and I realize the Q is not the NHL, but 134 games, 37 goals, 81 assists for a total of 118 points, and is also a +12. So maybe Boyard turns out to be something of a steal for the Rangers as well. And Aspinall, another gigantic late rounder for this New York Ranger team, played 5 games with the Wolfpack last year, but is now back with Flint of the OHL for his 4th season there and what will be his last season there. 15 points in 12 games so far for Aspinall in the OHL with Flint. So, again, 2024 is really hard to judge because, again, every single one of these players is just getting started. But to go to the big verdict here, kind of just summarize everything and eventually put a letter grade on this. So 2021, for me, that's a disaster class. Drury loses major points for this draft class, specifically for how it has gone with the first 3 players that he drafted that year, all of them in the 3rd round or earlier. We had Alfman in the 1st round, Grube and Korzak in the 3rd round. Not much of anything. It's not looking good for any of those players. And of course, Grube and Korzak not even here anymore. 2022 is a mixed bag. Major points for Noah Laba in the 4th round and how that turned out. Also gets points for Mancini and being able to parlay Mancini essentially into JT Miller. I know the Rangers gave up more than that. They also gave up Filipino and a 1st rounder, but Mancini was obviously part of that trade and helped get that done. So those are the good parts of 2022. The bad parts, Sikora and McConnell Barker in the 2nd and 3rd round, respectively, not looking all that great, at least as of now. 2023, again, it looks very good. Perreault, Fortescue, Robrick, those all look like very good picks, especially when you consider the rounds in which they were drafted. Perreault, they got him later in the 1st round than they should have. Fortescue in the 3rd round looks good. Dylan Robrick in the 6th round looks awesome. So that's a really solid draft class for Chris Drury there. At least that's the way it seems. Rangers didn't waste any early round draft picks in 2023, that's for sure. 2024, again, this one, I'm not going to weigh it as heavily as 2021 or 22 or 23 because these kids are just getting started. It's hard to know for sure. And 2025, we're not even going to bother with that because barely anything has happened with the players that were drafted that year. But 2024, Emery in the 1st, Boyard in the 4th, Aspinall in the 5th, they all look like pretty solid picks. And we don't know for sure what's going to happen with any of those players, but at least on paper, it looks all right. So for a letter grade here, I'm going to go with a B- for Drury overall for his entire body of work when it comes to drafting players to the New York Rangers. I did not think this grade would be this high, but here we are. I think overall, the good slightly outweighs the bad. That first draft class kills this grade. He might honestly get a B+ from me if, say, he had become Ranger GM in 2022 and 2021 was left up to somebody else to draft that class. The 2021 class really weighs it down. But, B- sounds about right for the work that Drury has put in here. I do also think that, again, while we're doing this Chris Drury mini-series here, this is the most difficult aspect of his job in which to grade him because, again, we just don't know for sure how it's going to go with all these players. But at least on paper and what we've seen thus far from these guys playing in the NHL, the AHL, the QMJHL, college, whatever it might be, I'm going B- for Chris Drury for his work drafting players as Ranger GM. But we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.